such that it will give the visitors a chance to see the history of the unit through its weaponry. For example, in this corner is what's known as the Brown Bess. And that's very, very hard to find, and it goes back to when our unit here was called out to the battles of 1812 in Niagara Falls area. Then over to this corner, those were muskets the same as the Brown Bess, but were converted to what's known as the 57 Snyder, and they became a breech loader. And that was the weaponry used by our guys in 1885 when they went west to fight Louis Riel, the Northwest Rebellion. So going along a little further, this rifle at the top is the first Lee Enfield rifle used in World War I. And below it is the Ross rifle, which was designed and made here in Canada particularly for our troops. And it was an excellent weapon on the range. Unfortunately, it was made to such fine tolerances that it couldn't stand up in the mud to the type of work the 303 was used to. So our troops finished the war using the 303. The Martini Henry down here was used both by ourselves and the enemy in 1885. And down in the bottom, this is First World War light machine gun. And in those days, we didn't have that sort of thing. And this had been made by the French for their army and had worked well until trench warfare times. And that involved a lot of dirt and mud. And you can see at the bottom that the magazine is open. So that led to problems with the mud and dirt. So the French army withdrew it, stored it in warehouses, and went to work on trying to make something else. By the end of the war, late in the war, the American forces came along and said they were ready to go to battle, but they needed a light machine gun. So the French showed them this, and it was called the Shoshat. And they said, that's just fine, we'll buy all of the ones you've got. So that took us up to the end of the First World War. Our unit, like many others, when they got to Europe, were disbanded and used as reinforcements for other units that had been there longer. So we very seldom see battle honors for the First War for the Grey and Simcoe Foresters, because it was some of the Grey and Simcoe Foresters who were in almost all of the other actions, but not in large numbers. Now, here, the Second War. Starting at the top, of course, that's the Thompson submachine gun. And that was used by the Americans to some limited degree, but at the start of the Second War, they were being manufactured for all American use. And the British forces recognized, we need something and we need it quickly, let's have a look at that. And they did, but all of the parts are machine made and making it very expensive to produce. And in those days, which was in the 1930s, that particular weapon would have cost somewhere in the neighborhood of $400. In those days, that's a lot of money that wasn't available too. So the Brits decided, no, they go home and make their own. And to the right here is the stem gun, which is what they wound up producing by using stamped metal parts instead of machined parts, and using ideas from other entities, other armies, and produced this, and their total cost for one of those was $4. And they dropped literally, I'm sure, millions, hundreds of thousands of them for forces all over Europe. And our Army used them, so did the Navy, so did the Air Force. Down on the left then is the German submachine gun, one of the superior machine guns, submachine guns used during the war. And then on the left standing is an assault rifle produced by the German Army and used later in the war. Next to it is what we used during the late 50s right up into the 1980s, and that was the FN rifle. Next to it is a rifle that was captured in Bosnia, and it was being used as a sniper rifle. One of our guys brought it back. The next two are both 303s used in the Second War, known as the Mark IV. And then on the right is a German Mauser, and that was the bolt action rifle used by all of their troops. To the right is a weapon known as the BAR, B-A-R, Browning Automatic Rifle. That was not issued to Canadian troops, but a good number of our men were part of the group known as the 1st Special Service Force, half of them American, half Canadian, and the Americans provided the uniforms and supplies, including weapons. Hence, we did have soldiers from here using that. In the bottom is the very famous Bren gun, which was basically our light machine gun. And that was used throughout the Second War, Korea, and United Nations engagements for a long, long time. Very effective weapon. And as you can see, it's kind of heavy. So it wasn't a little guy that carried that around all the time. And that brings us up to modern times. And so our history started back when the British Army had control of this land. And the settlers who had come in were automatically members of the militia if they were male, age 16 to age 65. So that would take us back even prior to 1812. And all of the chaps who were using this equipment originally started, most of them, as militia people, and then served throughout the Second War, again used to reinforce other units. And in the Second War, we were secondarily trained as armored, and so a lot of our guys were armored crews, and no engagements were recognized as Grain Simcoe Foresters because the driver might have been Grain Simcoe on the tank traveling in the same troop. Maybe it might have been the gunner that was Grain Simcoe, or it might have been the commanding officer. So that's it in a nutshell.
All right, yeah, thank you very much, and be sure to like and subscribe. Yeah.